She slapped a black Navy SEAL in broad daylight, then screamed for her husband to put him in his place. What she didn't know? He was trained to face real threats, not fragile egos. When the cameras rolled and fists flew, the truth didn't just come out, it exploded. This isn't just a story about racism. It's about silence, discipline, and the moment a veteran turned humiliation into history. Watch the viral showdown that shook a city and shattered 2 lives forever. It was a sunny Thursday afternoon in Fairview, California, the kind of day that made errands feel less like chores and more like excuses to soak up a little sun. Micah James, a 36-year-old former Navy SEAL, had just pulled into the shaded parking lot of Riverside Plaza, a busy shopping center near downtown. He drove a matte black Toyota Tacoma, unassuming but sharp. It was clean, well-kept, like everything else in his life. Micah had spotted the open parking space near the front and slid into it with practiced ease. He hadn't seen anyone else waiting, hadn't noticed any turn signals. Just an open space, fair game. He shifted into park and cut the engine, unaware that he just triggered the unraveling of 2 people's fragile illusions. Behind him, a white BMW SUV came to a halt, its driver gesturing wildly inside. Seconds later, a woman stepped out. Mid-40s, bleach blonde hair, tight blazer, heels clicking furiously on the pavement. Her name was Dana Caldwell, a local socialite who was used to getting her way and had no filter when she didn't. "That was my spot," she shrieked, marching toward Micah with a look of disbelief, as if the universe had just betrayed her. Micah stepped out of his truck calmly, keys in hand. He wore a gray athletic hoodie and jeans and stood with the effortless composure of someone who had faced much worse than a suburban meltdown. "I didn't see a signal," he said evenly. "There are plenty of other spots." Dana's face twisted into something venomous. "You people think the world belongs to you, always pushing in, always taking what you didn't earn." Micah felt his jaw tighten, but he said nothing. He'd heard those words before, at checkpoints overseas, in bars back home. This was not new. She moved closer, jabbing a manicured finger toward his chest. "You don't belong here. This neighborhood, this isn't for people like you." Micah took a breath, his hands still at his sides. Calm, always calm. Just then her husband, Trent Caldwell, stepped out of the BMW, all bluster and broad shoulders, a former college linebacker turned used car mogul. Trent wore his faded glory like a badge. His walk said alpha. His eyes screamed insecurity. "What's going on?" Trent demanded, eyeing Micah up and down. "You threatening my wife?" Dana clung to his arm dramatically. "He stole our spot, then got in my face when I called him out." Micah raised an eyebrow. "I didn't threaten anyone, just parked my truck." Trent puffed out his chest, stepping forward. "You got about 2 seconds to apologize and move that truck before I move it for you." Micah's silence was heavier than a threat. His eyes didn't flinch, and that stillness made Trent hesitate. Just for a second. But Dana wasn't done. With her husband as backup, she pushed further, her voice rising. "He's trying to intimidate me, probably has a gun in that truck." A small crowd had started to gather, shoppers with bags, people in line at the Starbucks patio, phones quietly raised. The tension was electric, charged with history, with expectation. Micah turned to leave, done with the nonsense. That's when Dana stepped in front of him and slapped him across the face. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Trent, startled, now saw red. "Nobody hits my wife back and walks away," he shouted, lunging at Micah with a swing. It never landed. Micah pivoted with surgical precision, catching Trent's arm mid-swing, redirecting his momentum. Trent stumbled forward, losing balance, and Micah gently, almost politely, helped him to the ground. Dana screamed. The onlookers froze. Phones were rolling. Micah looked around slowly, breathing controlled, jaw set. "Anyone else want to finish this conversation?" No one moved. He walked away, back toward the shopping plaza entrance, leaving Dana shrieking at her husband to get up and Trent groaning on the asphalt. What had started as a parking dispute had turned into something much larger, something that would soon explode across the internet and into the lives of everyone involved. By sunset, Micah's name wasn't just trending, it was boiling through every major social media feed. The original video, captured from 3 different angles, began with Dana Caldwell's screech, peaked with her slap, and culminated with Trent's failed tackle and Micah's calm, surgical takedown. The internet devoured it. Karen slaps Navy SEAL and regrets it. Chad thinks he can fight a trained operator. Instant karma. Those were the captions leading every repost. The reactions came in waves. Black Twitter lit up with support. Veteran communities rallied behind Micah, flooding the thread with messages of respect and solidarity. Activists pointed out the racial undertones, dissecting Dana's escalation, her assumption that her whiteness and her husband would win her the day. But the story didn't stop with internet virality. Micah's past came to light. Honorably discharged, multiple tours, Purple Heart recipient, current youth mentor, and JROTC coach at a local high school. He wasn't just a Navy SEAL, he was the embodiment of calm strength, the guy who led community cleanups on Saturdays and gave motivational talks at the YMCA. In contrast, Dana and Trent Caldwell were outed almost immediately. Dana's LinkedIn and Facebook were screenshotted and shared. Trent's face was plastered on meme after meme, labeled everything from fake tough guy to human bowling pin. Within 24 hours, Dana was suspended from her position at a luxury real estate firm for violating their ethics policy. Trent's used car dealership's Google rating plummeted from 4.7 stars to 1.8, flooded with sarcastic reviews like, 10/10 would not buy from the guy who got folded like laundry by a Navy SEAL. Bought a car and got a free lesson in white fragility. Local news picked up the story next. Fairview Times ran the headline, Parking Lot Showdown, Decorated Vet Becomes Target of Racially Charged Outburst. Their segment showed Micah's military photo beside a short interview clip recorded from his front porch. He wore a simple white t-shirt, his arms crossed calmly. "I didn't go looking for trouble," he said, "but I'm not going to let someone else define me or intimidate me because of the color of my skin." It was a mic drop moment, measured, powerful, and unmistakably human. The response was seismic. Micah's Instagram following exploded overnight. Comments poured in by the thousands. "You handled that with grace. Respect. As a Marine, I salute you, brother. Thank you for showing what real strength looks like." Brands reached out, military gear companies, fitness apps, even a podcast network wanting to feature his story. But not everything was praise. A handful of voices, faint but persistent, tried to flip the narrative. Maybe he did provoke her. Why didn't he just walk away? He shouldn't have blocked her husband's punch like that. They were drowned out by louder, sharper rebuttals. Especially after a longer version of the video emerged, showing Dana calling Micah a thug and whispering, "You people always take what doesn't belong to you." There was no more plausible deniability. Back at home, Micah sat quietly at his kitchen table, his phone buzzing every few seconds. His teenage niece, Ava, scrolled through her phone with wide eyes. "Uncle Micah, you're on TikTok," she whispered. "Like, a lot." They even made a remix of Dana screaming. Micah smirked, shaking his head. "I just wanted almond milk and protein powder." She laughed, but her tone shifted quickly. "You okay though?" Micah nodded. "Yeah, I've been through worse." But even as he said it, he could feel the storm gathering. Something inside Dana Caldwell had snapped that day. And people like her, when they lose their illusion of control, they don't just walk away quietly. She'd been embarrassed, defeated, exposed. And if Micah had learned anything from his years in combat zones and conflict resolution training, it was this. People don't always come back with fists. Sometimes they come back with lawyers, lies, or worse. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By Thursday morning, Micah's front lawn was covered in news vans, boom mics, and flashing cameras. Reporters shouted over each other as if competing for his attention. He didn't come outside. He'd already said what he needed to. The video spoke louder than he ever could. But while the world debated whether Dana and Trent Caldwell were just bad actors or symptoms of a deeper rot, they were busy preparing a very different kind of counterattack. At 9:13 a.m., Micah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Bennett, this is Patricia LeClaire, legal counsel for Dana and Trent Caldwell. We're notifying you that our clients will be filing a restraining order against you for physical intimidation, harassment, and endangerment in a public space. Micah blinked. What? They're also pursuing a civil suit for emotional trauma and seeking damages for injuries sustained during the altercation you instigated. Micah didn't respond right away. He just stared at the floor, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. You're serious? He finally asked. I'm just the messenger, she replied, a little too cheerfully. You'll receive the paperwork within 48 hours. And with that, she hung up. Micah stood still for a full minute, fists tightening. His jaw clenched. It wasn't just the lie, it was the audacity. The same people who had tried to humiliate him were now claiming to be the victims. The exact kind of privilege he'd spent his life confronting was now rebranding itself as the injured party. That evening, while Micah was at the gym trying to work off his frustration, someone spray-painted "thug in uniform" across the side of his truck. It wasn't subtle. Security footage showed a hooded figure, too grainy to identify. The police shrugged. Unless we catch them in the act, not much we can do. Micah filed the report anyway, but deep down, he knew. This wasn't about justice. It was retaliation. Dana and Trent had tried to win with aggression, and they'd lost. Now, they were reaching for the system they'd always relied on, the one that rarely asked them questions. They had money, connections, a new strategy. Micah called his friend Marcus, an attorney and former JAG officer. I need someone sharp, he said. They're playing dirty. Marcus didn't hesitate. You've got me. By Friday, Dana Caldwell was live on a morning show, sitting with a publicist and a tissue in hand. Her voice quivered as she looked into the camera. I just wanted to park and run in for groceries. I didn't know who he was. I felt threatened. He was so aggressive. The anchor nodded sympathetically. And your husband? Dana dabbed her eyes. He was just trying to defend me. That man broke his ribs. And now we're getting death threats. My children are afraid to go to school. No mention of the slurs. No mention of the slap. No mention of the rock through Micah's windshield or the reckless fleeing. Just a tear-streaked narrative shaped to trigger sympathy and plausible deniability. Micah turned off the TV. He wasn't surprised, but he was angry. They weren't just rewriting the story, they were casting themselves as the heroes. He opened his laptop, a half-dozen emails from advocacy groups, 3 from veterans organizations offering legal support, and 1 from a woman named Lauren Cho, producer at Justice Stream, a popular investigative docuseries on Netflix. I've been following your story, she wrote. Would love to meet, off the record, just to talk. Micah wasn't sure what made him respond, but he did. When they met at a quiet cafe the next day, Lauren listened more than she talked. She didn't ask him to perform his pain, she just asked for the facts. And then she asked a question no one else had. What do you want to happen next? Micah thought for a long time. I want accountability, he said finally. But not just for me. For everyone who's been in my shoes, but didn't have it caught on camera. For every black man who's been villainized for defending himself. For every veteran who came home only to get treated like a threat. Lauren nodded, scribbling something in her notebook. You'll get your day, she said. And as she walked away, Micah felt something shift. Not in the world, but in himself. The Caldwells had come after him with everything they had. But they had underestimated the power of truth and the will of someone who had already survived wars far worse than this. The battle wasn't over. But now, Micah wasn't fighting it alone. Micah's moment came 2 weeks later, on a Monday that felt like the tide itself was turning. By then, the Caldwell's narrative had begun to crumble. A bystander had released longer, unedited footage to the press. It showed Dana slapping Micah first. It showed her calling him a government pawn and monkey in uniform. It showed Trent charging him with a rock in hand, and Micah standing calmly, restrained, controlled. The footage went viral again, but this time, without the convenient edits. And this time, it wasn't Micah who had to speak. America did it for him. Within hours, hashtags like Protect Micah and Caldwell Lies started trending. Black veterans groups issued public statements. A retired Marine colonel tweeted, "This man served his country, and this is how we repay him? Not on my watch." Micah woke up that morning to over 9,000 unread emails and nearly 300 voicemails. But one call changed everything. The DA's office. "Mr. Bennett, this is ADA Erica Vaughn. We've reviewed the evidence in your case. Due to overwhelming public documentation, we are formally filing criminal charges against Dana and Trent Caldwell for aggravated assault, false reporting, vandalism, and reckless endangerment." Micah was stunned silent. "You won't need to press charges privately," she continued. "The state's taking this over. We'd also like to speak to you about testifying in the public hearing. There's a bigger pattern here." When he hung up, Micah sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on knees, staring at the sunlight creeping in through the blinds. Not from relief, not from vindication, but from disbelief. That for once, the system hadn't turned its back. That afternoon, Lauren Cho and her film crew arrived with 2 cameras, a producer, and a quiet reverence Micah didn't expect. They didn't mic him up right away. Instead, they spent nearly an hour walking the scene. The parking lot, the scratch where his windshield used to be, the path Dana had taken when she screamed, the stain on the pavement where Brad had landed. "We want people to see it," Lauren said, "not just the incident, but the space. So they understand it wasn't just an internet story. It was real." Micah finally agreed to speak on camera. Not for attention, not for drama, for documentation. "When she hit me," he said quietly, "I wasn't thinking about my dignity. I was thinking about survival. Because I knew that the moment I pushed back, even an inch, I'd become the story. And not the truth. The version of me she needed to justify her violence." His voice didn't crack, he didn't cry. But everyone on set was silent when he finished. That episode dropped the next Friday. By Sunday, the Caldwell incident had been watched 18 million times. Dana's interview on that morning show? Taken down. Trent's lawsuit? Quietly withdrawn. And then came the subpoenas. The trial was set for fall. But before it even reached the courtroom, the social consequences had already landed like hammers. Dana Caldwell, once a respected real estate broker, was fired by her firm. Their official statement read, "We do not employ racists. Period." Trent's contracting license was suspended pending investigation. Several former clients came forward to say he had a pattern of aggressive behavior. Their homeowners association announced they were no longer welcome at community events. Their kids were pulled out of school. Rumors said they were homeschooled now, out of fear. But Micah didn't feel triumphant. He felt quiet. "They still think they're the victims," he told Marcus one evening, as they sat outside a barbecue spot with cold beers and a world of distance between them and that first confrontation. "Doesn't matter," Marcus replied, "because the rest of us know better now." Micah nodded. The cameras had caught the slap. The people had seen the restraint. The world had witnessed what happened when privilege expected silence, and instead met a man who stood his ground. But what stuck with Micah most was this. It hadn't been the punch that turned the tide. It had been the truth. Unedited. Undeniable. The courthouse steps were packed the morning of the final hearing. Local news vans idled out front. Reporters fanned out across the sidewalk. Protesters with handmade signs stood shoulder to shoulder with veterans in dress blues. One held up a poster that read, Black veterans aren't your target practice. Micah hadn't asked for any of it. But now that it was here, he understood. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every black man who had ever had to bite his tongue so he didn't get shot. About every soldier who returned home expecting honor and instead found suspicion. Inside, the courtroom was humming with quiet tension. Dana sat stiffly at the defense table in a beige blazer 3 sizes too big, her once glamorous confidence now buried beneath layers of legal exhaustion. Trent slouched beside her, bruises gone but ego still bandaged, fidgeting with a broken watch strap. They looked like people who had already lost. Micah took his seat beside the ADA. He wasn't in uniform, just a navy suit, clean shave, calm demeanor. But there was something about the way he sat, shoulders relaxed, back straight, that said, "I am not afraid of you anymore." When the judge entered, the room rose. The gavel dropped. After months of legal back and forth, the moment of judgment was here. After reviewing all evidence submitted, the judge began, including video footage, eyewitness statements, and the defendant's own social media history. This court finds Dana and Trent Caldwell guilty on all counts. Dana didn't cry, not yet, but her jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might snap. "Miss Caldwell, Mr. Caldwell," the judge continued, "your actions were not only criminal, but dangerous. You escalated a minor disagreement into an incident that could have led to serious injury or death, and had it not been for Mr. Bennett's extraordinary restraint, this story might have ended very differently." Micah felt the weight of that line settle over the room like a heavy fog. Because it was true. If he'd reacted differently, if he had raised his voice, raised his hands, even raised his eyebrows, the outcome might have involved handcuffs or a headstone. But he had refused to become their stereotype. And now they were paying for it. "Mr. Trent Caldwell," the judge said, "you are hereby sentenced to 18 months in county jail, followed by 2 years probation. You will pay full restitution for the damage to Mr. Bennett's vehicle and additional court fees." Trent flinched. Dana turned to him with wide eyes, but before she could speak, the judge cut in again. "Miss Dana Caldwell, you are sentenced to 9 months in jail, 3 years probation, and 100 hours of community service, specifically working with veterans advocacy groups. You will also complete mandatory racial bias training and issue a formal public apology." Dana stood up suddenly, like she might object, but the judge didn't care. "Court is adjourned." The gavel hit, and that was it. No more interviews, no more edited footage, no more games, just consequences. As they were led away, Dana finally cracked. "This isn't fair," she screamed. "You don't know what he's like. You're ruining our lives." But no one listened. Micah didn't even look at her. He was already walking out of the courtroom. The sun hit his face the second he stepped outside. The crowd exploded. Cheers, applause, a few people just crying outright. Veterans saluted him. Kids called his name. An elderly black man with a navy hat nodded and simply said, "You made us proud." Micah smiled. Not for the cameras, not for the story, for himself. Because for once, justice hadn't been a whisper. It had been loud, public, undeniable, and he had lived to see it. That evening, Micah sat on his porch, a glass of iced tea sweating in his hand. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet you only notice when your soul finally exhales. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Lauren, the journalist. "The follow-up documentary is done. It's going live tomorrow." The title? He tapped to open the preview link. At the top of the screen it read, "The Parking Lot That Changed Everything." Below it, a single quote from Micah. "Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is nothing, but sometimes that's the loudest fight of all." Micah stared at it for a moment, then smiled, then leaned back, the sky turning gold above him, and whispered the words again, this time to no one but himself. "That's the loudest fight of all." What is lesson of this story? 1. Restraint is power. Micah's decision not to retaliate immediately was not weakness, it was wisdom. He knew that reacting in anger might cost him everything. Instead, he chose control, and that saved his life and his legacy. 2. Racism can't hide behind politeness. Dana and Trent's entitlement and passive-aggressive language were just masks for deep-rooted bigotry. Their downfall proves that public perception is shifting, and ignorance is no longer excused. 3. Public accountability matters. Social media played a key role in exposing the truth. In a world of smartphones and viral videos, actions have real, immediate consequences. The crowd didn't just witness injustice, they documented it. 4. Service deserves respect. Micah's identity as a veteran didn't protect him from prejudice, but in the end, it reminded the world of what true sacrifice and discipline look like. Number 5. Privilege can't protect you forever. The Caldwells thought their race, status, and reputation would shield them. They were wrong. Justice came for them, slow, steady, and televised. What do you think about this story? Let's comment below to discuss. And don't forget to subscribe our channel to listen to more interesting stories.